What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Speaker Lab podcast. It is great to be here with you today. Now, I know what you're thinking. Where in the world is the host of the Speaker Lab podcast? Where is Grant Baldwin? And who is this guy with a face for radio and a voice from heaven? My name is Shane Sams. I'm the host of the Shane Sams Show, and I am great friends with Grant Baldwin. And he hollered at me a little while back and said, man, we're about to do the 500th episode of this podcast. And I was wondering if you would come on and you would interview me and we could talk about the Speaker Lab and all that we do here. And I said, anytime, any place, let's do it, man. So without further ado, my guest today on the Speaker Lab podcast, Grant Baldwin. How you doing, man?
Man, that was delightful. I don't know what we've got ourselves into with having you do this. And so this is going to be a ton of fun. We've known each other for a long, long time. We're very, very close friends. I've shared a lot of life. And so this is going to be this is a real treat, man. I appreciate you coming to hang out with us today.
Yeah, man, it's an honor, dude, to be your friend, to watch you as a dad, to watch you as a business owner, and to watch you do what you do, serving all the speakers out there in the Speaker Lab Nation. And man, I can't wait to unpack that a little bit and tell everybody about this this amazing thing that you've built. Now,
500
I want to
episodes.
start somewhere
That's
else.
crazy.
500 episodes, dude. That is absolutely insane, man. I mean, I wonder what percentage of podcasters actually make it to 500, because it's like 80% of them make it to like one. They do one episode, then they just let it go. Has it sunk in that you've been doing this show that long and you've been doing it for 500 episodes?
I don't think so. I mean, not necessarily. I think it's just kind of, I think like in business, you hit some of these like milestones and it's just kind of like, oh, that's kind of cool. And you just take a second, acknowledge it, and then just back to it, you know? And so I kind of feel like that with this of just, it's, we've been doing like one episode a week for, I think 8 years at this point. It was January 2016 was our first episode. And so just sticking with it over a long period of time. And so there's no like magic formula or secret sauce or anything like that. You just keep showing up and doing the dang thing.
Did you, when you started, I remember when I started my podcast and I was like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to see if anybody listens. And yeah, if it doesn't work in about 10, 15 episodes, I may just like give it up. Did you think that when you started it out, or did you just be like, you know what, I'm literally committing to do this until it works or I die trying? Or did you think no one's going to listen to this thing?
I mean, there's definitely been times where like you feel burnout or tired, or you kind of wonder like, what's the point of this? And you just like, why are we doing this? Do we need to keep doing this? And but at the same time, also I hear regularly from people who listen to it, who came across it, who may not have joined anything that we offer in terms of just like financially investing into their speaking business, but like they find this free resource. There's hundreds and hundreds of hours that they can listen to and consume, and it's been super helpful. And like that's a huge, huge win. So yeah, when I started, it wasn't anything like, hey, the goal is 500 or 1,000 or whatever number of episodes. It's just Tuesday's coming. Let's put out an episode, and just sticking with that for several years now.
You know what's funny about podcasting in particular, because there's a lot of ways that we could promote our brands. But before I became a speaker, I was a podcaster for 7 years, and it's incredible if you're a speaker and you're not just doing a podcast just for the reps.
Yeah.
I mean, you get to come on every week, tell your stories, talk to things, practice things. Like if you've got a new joke, a new anecdote, a new something you're going to say on stage. Like if you want 10,000 hours of speaking, there's no better way to do it than podcasting. When I spoke for the first time in front of a big crowd, everybody walked off and went, "You're a natural. You were born to do this. How did you just walk out there for the first time and do it?" I'm like, I have told these stories 1,000 times. And like, do you find yourself doing that over and over again, just saying your stories, saying things that are happening, even like as a guest or on your own show?
No, absolutely. And I think that's also part of, like you said, what I always use the analogy of like a chef, and a chef's making like their signature dish. Well, it's not a signature dish on day one. It's they've made it, they've iterated it, they've tested it, and they got it to the point where like, I've been doing this for a long time, cooking this exact same dish, and I've got it down. And so, yeah, there's definitely going to be stories where I know that this works, and podcasting is a great medium. It's a great outlet to, try new stories and to test new material, and to, it's a laboratory to play with different ideas or thoughts.
You can take some chances, and then it just disappears in the ether of all your episodes. Like
off it goes.
Now you had another podcast though. You didn't start out with the Speaker Lab podcast, right? What were you doing right before you launched the Speaker Lab?
Yeah, so I was a full-time speaker for 7, 8 years or so. I was doing about 60, 70 gigs a year. And I think in like 2013, 2014, I stumbled across our now mutual friend, Pat Flynn. And shout out to Pat. His podcast was super inspirational and influential for me, for a lot of people. And so that was definitely one thing where looking at like, hey, maybe I should consider doing a podcast, and then kind of learning about online business and courses and that sort of thing. And so my first foray into the podcasting space was a podcast called How Did You Get Into That? And it was still like I really, really enjoyed doing the show. It was we launched it, I think it was like in May 2014, if I remember correctly. So I mean, coming up on like 10 years from about the time of this recording. And so the idea was I had a lot of people who were asking me like, hey, you're a speaker. That's kind of cool. I want to do that. How would I do that? How did you get into that? And so I was kind of, answering that question, which kind of led eventually into the Speaker Lab. But I found myself asking other people the question. Like we've all done that before. You meet someone who has some type of like interesting career and you're like, that's kind of cool. How did you get into that? And so we interviewed a guy who's like a Lego master builder, and interviewed a guy who worked for Nike and worked with Michael Jordan designing some of the Air Jordans, and a lady who is a cheesemonger, like one of the top cheese whizzes in the world, literally, a guy who's an NBA mascot. So just these like unique types of careers where you're like, that's wild. Like how there's no like traditional path to do that. How did you get into that? And so did that for a long time. And it was like, we did it for about almost 2 years, and it's just super rewarding. I really, really enjoyed doing that. And so podcasting was definitely it's a medium like I've just always really enjoyed, and it's just resonated. So yeah, 10 years of podcasting is pretty wild.
The entrepreneur, speaker, all the journeys too. It's funny, like you gotta start something. Like it doesn't matter what you do, it only matters that you do. I think people think they got to have the perfect talk, the perfect gig, the perfect everything, but that's just an example of I'm just going to throw some mud on the wall and I'm going to see kind of what sticks. Did the Lego master builder, did he plant the seeds for your addiction to building Legos right now? Because if you watch Grant's stuff on YouTube or anywhere, he's got like a Lego globe behind him. I don't even believe those are real books. I think you built those out of Legos.
I got
But
this
like
cool
you're building
typewriter over
Legos
here.
constantly.
It is.
You got a typewriter, man.
It is
You're
awesome.
addicted to Legos, dude.
I do. My wife has tolerated it, and yeah, it's some like Lego's just one of those things that still holds up years later. I remember playing with them as a kid, and then got into it, I don't know, a year or two ago, and so I'm buying sets regularly. I'm running out of places to put them, and so that's my issue
Just
right
send
now.
them to me. I got shelf space.
Where do I put these things? But Lego still holds up. It's pretty fun.
Well, your wife, Sheila, it could have been worse. Just tell Sheila whenever she's mad about your Lego, it could have been the cheesemonger that inspired you, and you could be cooking cheese at your house all the time. So, where did the Speaker Lab like come from? Like, where did you have the idea? When did you decide that you were going to help speakers go out, find gigs, get booked and paid to speak? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, so years ago when I got started speaking at the time, this was like 19, 20 years ago or so, there were no books, podcasts, resources, training, courses. There just wasn't a lot of material out there teaching about the business of speaking. There's a lot out there on putting together good presentation and storytelling and that sort of thing. I just couldn't find anything on like, yeah, but how do you actually book a gig? And so that was the thing I was looking for. So actually a couple years into speaking, I started to have some people ask me that question. And I remember this was like 2010. I did like a 1 year little mastermind type deal for 10 people. I did like one training session a month with them, basically teaching like speaking fees and what do you speak about and your marketing assets and, website and demo video, that sort of thing. And did that for about a year and just kind of left that on the back burner, but continually had people ask me like, hey, I want to be a speaker. I want to do what you do. How would I do that? And the reality is like speakers everywhere get hit up with that same question and like, hey, I want to do what you do. How do I do that? And I knew that there just weren't a lot of good resources out there. I felt like we'd figured some things out. And as much as I enjoyed like the art and craft of speaking, I really enjoyed the business of speaking. And like there's a process to it of how do you actually book gigs. And so we started doing a little bit of coaching here and there on that. And eventually I started like, hey, I think there's something here. And the thing that I was running into personally as a speaker, and I've talked about this a lot publicly, is that speaking is a high-paying manual labor job in that you get paid really, really well to stand on stage, to run your mouth. But the nature of it is you got to show up, you got to leave your family, you got to go do the thing that you get paid for. It's like a surgeon. A surgeon makes good money to do surgery, but you got to go do surgery. And so I was like, this isn't a business necessarily. This is a job. It's a cool job. I really enjoy it, but at the end of the day, it's a job. And so I was really thinking about like, all right, if I was going to do something different, what that might look like. And that's when I really started thinking about like, I am really intrigued on this speaking thing. And so the nutshell is like I had been doing the How Did You Get In That podcast for a year and a half or so, created a course called Clarity Course. This came out in like December, I think like 2014, I believe. And we launched this course, and I'm thinking like, I mean, this is a point where like courses are starting to really become a thing. This is again 10 years ago or so. And I'm like, I hear about these course launches, baby. This is our ticket, and we're get ready to retire. This is going to be the thing. And so create this course, launch it December 2014, and it's just crickets and just absolutely nothing worked. And I was
That's
like, what
amazing.
the heck, man? We put so much work and energy and effort into it, and it just was nothing. Like we sold a few, but it wasn't nearly what I anticipated. And so I remember meeting then with a couple of mutual friends of ours, Joe Nicoletti, Brian Harris, and talking with these guys. And they're like, yeah, like that happens. You launch something out into the ether and it doesn't work, and you pivot and you iterate and you learn. And I was like, yeah, but I want to scrap this whole thing. All this work I put into it, I want to just abandon. And I really want to teach speakers. And they're like, are you sure about that? I said, I think so. And so vividly remember sitting with Brian and Joe, a couple other guys in a Sunday school classroom and workshopping, brainstorming ideas. And we came up with the name Booked and Paid to Speak, which now, as you know, is a little fun fact, is a U.S. trademarked phrase, Booked and Paid to Speak, which is pretty cool. But
That's
at
pretty
that
cool.
point, it was just like, hey, let's start doing some courses. Let's start doing some stuff around this and start to lean into that. And so leaning into that was really where things started to pick up a lot more.
Yeah. And it's funny because I don't know if I ever told you this. So when we met, again, I wasn't pursuing speaking when we started hanging out and masterminding and doing stuff like that. But one of the first things that we did was, you still had your course. We kind of exchanged. I don't know what iteration it was when we met, but like we exchanged course logins. Like, hey
Okay.
man, I'll give you one of my
Yeah,
course. I'll
yeah.
give you one of my course. And me and Grant sometimes, and him more so than me. He's a PUBG world champion. He likes to play a little PUBG every once in a while. And I'll jump in and play a little PUBG. But I've got this habit. I like to watch courses and play PUBG in the bath. That's what I like to do, guys. I like to turn on the
This is
jets.
true.
I
This
like
is
to
true.
play some games. So I'm sitting there and I'm sitting there. I get home. You give me the password. I get in the bath and I put my computer up and I
I did
turn the
not
hot
know
tub
any of
jets
this.
on, and I'm watching this course. And Jocelyn's like, "Who is this Grant Baldwin guy?" And I'm like, "I don't know." But I want to be a speaker now. Like I was like every module I was watching, I was like, Jocelyn, I think I could do this. This guy makes it sound so good. And like I think I could actually do. So I think that like the seed of me eventually speaking was that hot tub bath
Was
sitting
that
there
sitting in
watching
that
your course, man.
bathtub?
So thank you for that. Yeah, but luckily I did not log in with any coaches while I was in the bath, y'all. So
It's
don't
good to
worry
know. Good to know.
about that. Okay. And like what was that like? Like there's a big difference in being a speaker and being on the stage, and you
Yeah.
practice what you preach, you drink your own Kool-Aid, you're out there doing things, and you're in front of people. And then what was it like going from like coaching people and speaking to actually doing it yourself? Because you're a really driven guy, dude. You're going to figure out how to do something. You're going to knock down doors and pick brains and do whatever it takes. But some people are not like that. They're just not wired like that. What was that like going from speaker to teacher and helping people figure out that craft of getting booked and paid to speak?
Yeah, I mean for a long time and even till today I've always felt like I want to help people who are where I was when I got started. Because when I got started, I had been a youth pastor. I did that for a little while. That had given me a lot of opportunities to speak. Speaking is one of those things, kind of similar to you, Shane, where like you've done it before. You feel like you're decent at it. You want to do more of it, but you're just like, now what? What do I do? Because still today, like speaking is for so many people is kind of this mysterious black box, and people assume that you have to have some crazy overcoming obstacle story, or you need to have conquered cancer, or won a gold medal, or climb Mount Everest in your shorts blindfolded. Like something has to have happened in life where people all of a sudden are like, oh, yeah, well, of course, that person should be a speaker. So for me, like I'm a white male from the Midwest who had a normal childhood, grew up in a middle class family. Like there's nothing on paper where you'd say, yeah, of course, that dude should be a speaker. And so I think for me, it's like, I want to do this. I think I can do this. And so a phrase I used a lot and still today is like, I had the potential, but I needed the plan. I had the potential, but I needed the plan. And that is where so many people are today as it relates to speaking is they have the potential. They've spoken in a Sunday school class. They have spoke at something at work. They've presented in a meeting. They got invited to speak at something for a friend or for something in their industry or space or something for their job. And they've given
And
a
they get the
couple of,
bug.
yeah, they've
They
given a
get the
couple
bug. You
talks
know what I'm
and just
saying?
like, I want to do this, but now, and they're just kind of like looking around, like, do I find a bureau? Do I find an agent? Is there a circuit? How do I get in this circuit? You know, like, how does this, there is no circuit, as the spoiler alert. And it just feels like this mysterious world. And the reality is that there is a method to the madness that you can get booked and paid to speak, but you got to know what you're doing. And so that's what we really wanted to demystify and to teach people and train people on. And so when we started teaching people and training people and people started getting, the same results or even better results than I ever got, it was just like incredibly gratifying and satisfying. Like, wow, this works. Like, this is not like a flash in the pan thing, but ultimately it comes down to like you doing the work to get those results.
And yeah, and like when I started my business, I remember like the first few people we helped, and I was like, because Jocelyn and I had a unique story just because we did one thing and then we did it again, and I was like, oh man, that wasn't like a one-hit wonder. Then we helped someone else do something, and I was like, holy crap, this actually works. Do you remember any of those first couple people that you helped, and you were like, they got booked and paid to speak? This is absolutely ridiculous. Do you remember any of those stories or anything like that from the
Yeah,
first
I
few
mean,
people that you helped?
even like well before the Speaker Lab, there was a guy that reached out to me. I was living in Missouri at the time, where my wife and I are from, and there's a guy who's kind of a mutual. We had some like mutual friends, and he was a couple years younger than me, and so he reached out, and so I remember going to lunch, and I was like, yeah, I think I can help you. I think this would be fun, and so started helping him. He started booking some gigs, and fast forward, like he's done a ton of gigs. He's a full-time speaker. He's killing it, and makes a crap load of money as a speaker. Kyle Sheely, you can look him up. But back in like, I don't know, probably 12 years ago, I probably got some email in the archives of him going like, hey, I kind of want to be a speaker. I've heard of you. How do I do this? And so to look at like, he's a full-time speaker now and has been doing it for years and like some major stages. He gets paid a crap load of money, has been super successful, and knowing like, okay, he's got to do all the work, but I know like I had like a 1% a participation trophy with helping him kind of get the ball rolling. So like that was a guy. Another student, Eric Ream, has been a very successful student who still does a lot of work with our students today. And Eric went to like one of our first webinars, and I think this was like 2016, 2017. He bought like our first iteration of a course, went through it, did it, and he just kept doing the work. And so a couple of years later, he was able to quit his job. Like he had a successful six-figure gig, was making good money, quit his job, and again today, and he's talked about this publicly, like he'll make close to seven figures in his speaking business this year. And he's like, man, I learned
Crazy,
so
man.
much from you, from the Speaker Lab. And again, like this isn't like a false humility or anything, but like this is Eric and Kyle, like they have to do the work. Like we can show people what to do, but like you still have to, like we joke about, you and I and some other guys, we joke about like bags of gold are heavy. And so we joke about like
Yes, they are.
if you want to be successful in life, whatever that looks like there's going to be like a cost to that, and you got to do the work. If you want to get in shape, like you have to lift heavy things, and those things are heavy. Like, so I can tell Eric like, hey man, you got to lift heavy things. He's like, yeah, but they're heavy. Like, yeah, dude, they're heavy. I know. But he's the one, Kyle's the one that like they've lifted the heavy things. They do the work. And so, we've had a very small hand in that, but ultimately those are the guys that, and again, hundreds of other people who have like done the work and are seeing the results. Like that's incredibly gratifying and fulfilling and rewarding.
It's like because that didn't just change his life, it changed his family's life,
Yeah.
probably his kids' life, because they'll probably go to a better school or have more time with their dad or go to see him speak, and that's probably cool. And I always view like what you do is kind of like it's like there's an asteroid coming toward Earth. You know what I'm saying? And like how would we move the asteroid? We would
Yeah.
send a little bitty bomb, and a little explosion, right? But that
Yeah.
knocks it to a completely new trajectory. And like to see you do that, like with speakers, because I've been in the industry, I know like how challenging it is. I know how heavy those bags of gold are, and man, you need support. Like you need help to be able to do that.
Well, I know
When you
just to
first launched, go
let
ahead.
me piggyback on that real quick. Like, just I don't know, maybe a month or so ago, I went up to meet up with Eric and met his wife, and had never met her before. And then just recently they went on a 2 week trip to Italy with their family. And it was cool to meet her, and her kind of just sharing like, hey, what the Speaker Lab has done has like legit changed our life. Like we're getting ready to take our family
It's a
to
nuclear
Italy.
explosion, baby, in
Yeah,
outer
like
space. You know what I'm saying? That's
we
what
would
it is,
never have been
dude.
able to do that, without the Speaker Lab. And so that, that type of stuff of knowing like how it impacted their family, their kids, their marriage is, yes, like that's incredibly, incredibly rewarding. And that's here's what's cool is about speaking is that's the case for any speaker is when you're speaking, there is this ripple effect that happens, and it's not just who you're speaking to, but it's how it impacts those audience members, how it impacts their families. And like we have no idea the ripple effect that takes place way beyond what we can ever see. So yeah, speaking is just such a really, really powerful and effective medium for like truly making an impact and making a difference in the lives of people.
Yeah. One thing that's happening now is my kids get older because I've pivoted pretty hard into the public
Mm-hmm.
speaking and things like
Oh yeah.
that. And this is something that I never would have expected from, I was a digital course seller, a membership person, all these other things I did before I got into the speaking world. And Anna Joe, my little girl, this morning, this just happened. I'm probably going to go do an event in Boston, like in July, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be Crowder, Crowder, the Christian
Oh
musician
yeah,
guy.
yeah,
Vince
yeah,
Crowder.
yep.
Yeah. My kids love Crowder, and I said, hey, Crowder's going to be at this, and it's going to be pretty cool. I'm going to probably get to meet Crowder, and which is another whole other benefit of speaking is just hanging
Yeah.
out with people backstage. But Anna Joe goes, hey, Dad, can we bring Emma and my friend Emma because I want to take her backstage like I went in California, and I want her to meet Crowder. But then she said, and I want her to see what you do. And I was like,
That's cool.
oh man, that was like she's not going to be like, hey, Dad, can I come over to the house and watch you podcast with Grant?
Yeah.
But by golly, if there's an event with a band, she's going to be able. So just to
That's
feel
awesome.
that as a dad, like my daughter's kind
Yeah.
of proud of it. It's amazing. Now, Speaker Lab started out courses. We all kind of go through this like
Yeah.
process, but you really, dude, I watched you do something incredible with Speaker. Like I remember sitting around the table, we're out in the woods hanging out, and I remember you kind of making this decision to turn Speaker Lab into what it is today. You wanted to scale it, you wanted to grow it, make a bigger impact on people, and you really did, man. Speaker Lab became this online business into this Inc. 5000 incredible thing that's really like making a difference in the entire industry that you're in.
Yeah.
Like, what was the biggest obstacle, like to turning to building and generating these resources that you knew your students needed to go out, like coaches, support, onboarding, all these things? Like, what was the biggest obstacle in taking Speaker Lab from what it was, this amazing thing that was helping people, to this next level thing, helping just tons of people, thousands of people all over the world?
Yeah, I think that as we have gone, people ask sometimes like, "Hey, did you ever envision it would be to the size and scope that it is today?" It's like, no, absolutely not. Like this is all like playing with house money, and it wasn't like we had some grand vision that's just like, oh, I knew this from day one. And if anything, like I think I've heard the analogy before, and this has been used in a variety of different contexts, but like think about it like driving a car at night. When you're driving a car at night, you can only see a few feet in front of you, but you can drive, hundreds or thousands of miles that way. And that's so much of what building a business and being an entrepreneur, being a speaker is like, most speakers, we don't have some 5-10 year plan. You and I have busted our buddy Brian's chops before about like, hey, what's your 5-year goal? What's your 10 years? Like, dude, I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna have for
I don't
breakfast
know where I'm
tomorrow.
going
Like,
Thursday, Brian. Leave me alone, man. Just
stop
just
it.
go
I
pet a
don't,
dog.
what are you talking about? And so that's a good reference. And so whenever it comes to like thinking like that far ahead, like it's hard to know. You can only see what the headlights can show you. And so when you're taking a road trip at night, like you can't see the roadblocks, the constructions, the detour, the tree that fell in the road, like way up ahead. And so it's just like we'll figure that stuff when we get there. And so there is like I'd say in terms of just like some of the biggest obstacles, like a lot of it's just in your own head of just kind of your own doubts and insecurities and fears. And like one thing I've shared with our team numerous times is I went to Bible college and then I started working as a youth pastor at a local church. And then I got into speaking. And the church I was at had, I don't know, 10, 12 people on staff, small little church. And then got into speaking and then started the Speaker Lab. And so it's like the Speaker Lab is the biggest company that I've ever worked at. And so it's not like I have
Mm,
like all this major corporate experience of like, oh, okay, I know exactly how to build this thing and I know what this should look like and I know what let's pull this lever and this is what the org chart should look like and here's what this complicated finance thing should be like. This is all new to me. And so again, it's like you're realizing your own doubts and insecurities and fears and worries and anxieties. And also I think that's part of the benefit of, talking with you guys, you and some of the guys that we connect with and talk with on a regular basis is like the reality is I shared this with our team this morning. It's like we are all doing our best. We are all making it up as we go. And there's days where you look at someone like, man, they have their act together. They have it all figured out. I promise you, Shane can promise you, they do not. They are doing their best, and some days are good, and a lot of days are not. But you just keep waking up. You keep putting one foot in front of the other. Keep showing up and doing the thing. It's like the podcast, Plenty of days where you're just like, why are we recording today? Like, is anybody listening? Is this still worth it? But you keep showing up and doing the thing. And over time, it starts to compound and you end up with something there. But there's also things where you have to have the wisdom to say, like, hey, this isn't working, or maybe we need to pivot, or we need to stop doing this, or we need to adjust. And so there's plenty of times within the Speaker Lab, I'm just like, I'm over my head, I'm over my skis, but keep showing up, keep doing the thing, keep getting wisdom
yeah.
from other people, and keep doing our best. And thankfully, I feel like God's really blessed us with where we're at today.
How big is this? What's your team? Just the size, give or take.
Yeah,
I
we've
know.
got
I know
about
you're not really into. I know you're not into specifics all the time. But
we
like,
yeah, we've got around 45 people or so on the team. We're totally a virtual company. We've got team members, I think, in 23, 24 states, something like that. So yeah, we're all over the map.
man, it's so incredible too. Like I think of just like when I was first doing anything in my business or speaking or anything, like I remember looking and like not knowing where to go. You're Googling stuff, you're YouTubing stuff. But it's pretty powerful that you've created a resource where someone can literally have 45 human beings dedicated to helping them get booked and paid to speak. Like you have, it's a way to tap into something. That's what Russell Brunson said that one time at an event. They said you can work your way in or buy your way in, but man, you've created a thing that people can buy into and immediately be supported by a team of 45 human beings trying to help them accomplish their goal. That's pretty amazing, man. Like, you ever just look in the mirror and go, good job, dude? Because if you don't, I'm looking in the camera right now and saying, good job, dude. That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like incredibly gratifying. It's rewarding. Like I think a ton about our team and how do we like one thing we talk about internally a lot is how do you provide I want the Speaker Lab to be the best place that our team members ever work. And so like one thing I
Mm,
do is like within orientation when new team members join, we had three or four new team members join recently, and I did an onboarding orientation with them, and I said, candidly, cards on the table, I want to make this really, really hard for you to ever leave. Not in a manipulative
mm,
way, but I wanted, like, we've all worked jobs before where you're like, I'm doing something and it's fine. But like, if I could make 5% more doing something else, anything else, I'd totally do that. And like, that sucks. That sucks for them, sucks for the employer, sucks for people's families. Like, we all have to work. We all got to make a living. We all got to do something. And so I want to say like, hey, I really enjoy what I do. And the Speaker Lab's not perfect by any means, but there's a lot of things we do right. We have little to no turnover. People just love working here. We've had a lot of people who've been here for many, many years, and like, yeah, I'm going to retire here. Like, this is the place I want to be. And so
mm.
we show up each day with a passion. Like, we want to help speakers. There's a lot of speakers out there who want to have a message that they want to share, or figuring out what that message is, or not sure what to do or how to get that message out there. And we've worked with thousands and thousands of speakers all over the world, over 50 different countries around the world, all different ages and topics and demographics and nationalities and personalities that we've seen and worked with and helped. And so that's a big thing that we think about. Is like, how do we help you go share your message with the world?
It's incredible, man. So, and like, people, when it comes to speaking, what I've learned from you and I've learned from just being in the business now for like 4 years, people think there's a lot of skills you got to have when you go out and speak. Like, you do have to be able to, quiet the nerves and get in front of a big group. You got to be able to prepare a presentation, not 100 presentations. We got to prepare a great presentation and evolve that over time. But I think one of the most amazing skills that you've got to develop, and you can develop it, you don't have to be a natural at this, is relationships. Like, you've got to go out and build real relationships, shake the hands, meet the people, be in service, and then build relationships over time where you can get on stages, you can do these things. And you, dude, are one of the best relationship builders I have ever seen. You're the most intentional person about just being in service, being a good friend, and actually just like, not getting stagnant in your network. How did relationships help you in your speaking career? And then how have you leveraged relationships to turn Speaker Lab into what it is. Because, anytime I'm out and I run into somebody in speaking or something, I always say, have you ever heard of the Speaker Lab? And it never fails. If I'm at an event or anything, people have heard about you guys. People have heard about Grant Baldwin. So, like, how have you used relationships in your life? How have you developed relationships in your life? And how has that helped speaking and the Speaker Lab itself?
Yeah, I mean, this is building something, and as a speaker or an entrepreneur or whatever you may be doing is not it's not a solo sport, it's a team sport. And so whenever I talk about the Speaker Lab, I'm the one that started the Speaker Lab, and I own 100% of the business, but I never talk about it in terms of me, mine, my. It's always we, us, our. Like, we're all a part of this. So I tell new team members that, like, hey, I know you just walked in the door, but like, you're as much a part of this as anybody. And so we have 3 core values within the company, and one of those core values is ownership. And so we really value people seeing this. Like I say all the time, like, this is not the Grant show, and even within the podcast, listeners, you've seen that we've had a lot of other people who have been host on the show from our team and even outside of that, because it's not the Grant show. I never want it to be just about me. And so because of that, like, it's one of my most important roles is to build relationships, to nurture relationships, to connect with people who are a step or two ahead, or people who are students who are trying to figure out, what to do, and trying to figure out how do we best help them. It's, part of my role is helping our existing team members and just trying to be the best possible leader that I can be. A big thing that I do is connect with guys like you who just comparing notes and rubbing shoulders of just like, hey man, I'm thinking about this, or hey, I'm feeling this doubt or insecurity. Like, am I crazy? Oh, you feel that too? Okay, good. And so, looking for those relationships. One thing that's also, I think, important. Well, a couple of things. One would be, is so many of us live in like a virtual world. And like I said, our company is a completely virtual company. I'm here in Nashville. You're in Kentucky, a few hours away. And so if we only ever interacted via text or Zoom or something like that, like, it's fine, but like, it doesn't have the type of dynamic of relationship that we have today. So you and I get together a couple times a year in person. We do an annual houseboat trip with a couple other guys, where we go away for 3 or 4 nights and just goof off. And just that in-person time changes the dynamics. And so one thing I try to be intentional on is try to just get out of my office. Like, I love working from home. I love being with my wife, with my daughters, but I know that, like, in order to build relationships, I heard it said recently, like, it's important to get belly to belly with people and get out of your comfort zone. So go see people in person. And so, one, it's just like, leave your comfort zone, go to events, go to networking things, like, find where. I remember early on looking for like speakers that I wanted to connect with, and trying to figure out what events that they were going to be at, and trying to just show up at those events to connect with them. So just being intentional and strategic about that. But the other thing I would say is, there's a lot of people I've tried to connect with over the years that I don't necessarily have there's not like an agenda. There's not like, okay, if I do this, then maybe someday they can scratch my back and help me. No, like, being genuine of like, hey, here are people that I think I could help, and maybe someday they could help me, and maybe something I can learn from. But don't feel like relationships are just this purely transactional thing where you're just constantly looking for like, who can help me get ahead, who can help me do my thing or make my thing better, promote my thing, or whatever that may be. Like, that, it's just a short-sighted way of looking at things. So just when it comes to relationships, have a longer term view of them.
Yeah, I always tell people, like, the best thing you can ever do for anything you're pursuing is to put yourself in the right place so you have a chance to be in the right place at the right time. And I did very similar things. Like, Pat was speaking at an event up in Maine one time. I had no desire to ever go to Maine, but I was like, if I get, but it was, Pat speaks at these big places and there's hundreds of people and he gets swarmed all the time. This was a small event. It was like a couple hundred people. I was like, I know if we're at that place, we might run into him. So me and Jocelyn went there, and this was back when you could email Pat, and he was not as huge as he is now. But I emailed him like, "Are you speaking at this event?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Could me and Jocelyn take you out to dinner?" And he goes, "Yeah, man, I could go out on Tuesday night." Well, we had already booked to leave on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Let's just book a couple extra days. Let's get a babysitter a little bit, and let's just take Pat out to dinner." And that just became such an amazing friendship. We've been able to like support him and go do stuff for him at his events. And like, he's supported us so well. And it was just all because we were willing to stay the extra day. Actually, how I met you was like that too, because Jeff Rose, a mutual friend of ours, we were driving back from French Lick, Indiana. We were at a water park there. Home of Larry Bird, baby. And we were coming back, and I was like, I think that he lives near here. So I sent him a text. We had only met virtually. And I go, hey man, we're in the neighborhood. Could we just swing by and bring a couple burgers and just hang out with you and the kids? Our kids are with us and let them swim or whatever. He's like, yeah, man, come on over. Well, I didn't know he was an hour and a half north. So we just took a left in a cornfield and drove through Illinois for an hour and a half. But dude, that one little going out of the way to build a relationship with absolutely no idea how anything's going to, it changed my life because I met so many of my great friends, him and Mandy, and like, you just gotta like do those things. All right, let's switch gear. Oh, I want to tell you one more thing. I meant to mention this, so I have to mention this. It's perfect time. And another thing too is the genuineness of what you just said. Like, man, I tell you what, Grant, for those who don't know, he might not talk about it much here, but we hear it every single day as a pilot. He likes to fly planes, and he likes to tell you about him being in the aviation community, right? Okay,
this is true.
This is true. But dude, last year, we've known each other now for almost 7 years, I think. And like, man, I was having the hardest time. Like, I was depressed, I was down, things weren't going good. And man, you just got in the plane and came up here and ate lunch with me. And dude, if anything should just shine a light on the freaking quality of human being that Grant Baldwin is, man, I am so thankful and appreciate that so much. And that just showed me, man, oh man, it is a team sport, guys. You're going to have times in the speaking industry where things are going to go wrong. You're not going to have gigs. Something's going to go bad. Get yourself around some people, man, whether it's in the speaker lab or somewhere else. Now, let's go back in time real quick here. Kind of start moving toward wrapping up. But like, I know that everybody out there that's listening that wants to speak, they want to be on stage. They want to know like what that feels like. And I know that like it does feel different when you walk off a stage and people are waiting in line to shake your hand. There's just something about that. But what did it feel like when you got that first speaking gig? Like what is that feeling that everybody can expect when they get booked, they get paid to speak? And I'm not talking about someone let you talk on their Sunday school stage. I'm saying like someone gave me money to do that. What was that like when you got your first gig?
Yeah. And so, I'd been a youth pastor for a little while. And then I actually worked for an organization doing school assemblies, and they would pay me $100 to do a school assembly, which I was like, this is like $1 million. This is amazing. And so did that for a while, but it was always like, they were booking everything. I'm presenting their material. I'm just kind of a hired gun for them. And so when I finally made the decision, like, okay, I'm going to go all in on this. Like I want to be a speaker. And met a couple guys who were doing this. And again, like I said, this was 18, 19 years ago or so. There were no podcast, books, resources, tools about, building a speaking business. And so I found myself emailing other speakers, stalking other speakers, harassing other speakers, kind of pick your brain sort of thing. And kind of learned a couple things. And so started following kind of a blueprint. And eventually I booked my very first gig. And like I said, we were living in Missouri at the time. I grew up in kind of suburban life. And so I was invited to speak at this Missouri 4-H event. And 4-H, if you're not familiar, is like agricultural farming communities, and so I was like, I don't know squat about corn or cows or anything like this, but yes, sign me up, I'm in. And so I go and I give like this 30-45 minute keynote for about 300 I think middle school, high school students. And man, I worked so hard to prepare for this, leading up to this. And I go speak, and it went really, really well. I remember I got a standing ovation. And I remember just like, hot dang, like this is it. Like, this is what I want to do. And so afterwards, I'm talking with, I remember like students came up to me, like parents and teachers came up like, hey, can you come speak at our school? That was amazing. Like other people need to hear this. And just feeling like the confidence of like, oh, dang, like I can, like, this is a thing. I can actually do this. And so I remember the event planner, the decision maker that I'd worked with, he hands me an envelope with a check. And we had contracted ahead of time, so I knew how much the check was, but it was a check for $1,000. And so I vividly remember like going to the parking lot, sitting in the car, opening up, looking at that check. And again, $1,000 at the time was just like, it was just like all the money in the world. It was just $1 billion. And the other thing was, it was, not just from a financial standpoint, but just mentally, emotionally, it just felt like this vote of like, oh man, I can do this. Like, I want to do this. And I remember just breaking down into tears, calling my wife and just like, I cannot believe, like, I just had so much fun standing up there, and I know I made a difference. And all these people, came up to me and talked to me and encouraged me, and they're like, that was awesome. You got to keep doing this. And then to get a check for $1,000 was just like,
that's
believe
step
this.
One of the Dave Ramsey baby steps right there. You're just done.
One gig. And I think that like the thing that we talk about a lot internally now is I want students to have that same experience, because for me, yes, it was like the financial part of it. And, fast forward, I went on to make, a great living as a speaker. And I know so many speakers that have made, hundreds of thousands of dollars from speaking. So yes, there's a huge, huge financial opportunity. But for me, it was also like that first gig was kind of like pushing over that first domino in a series of dominoes. It was just the boost of confidence of like, oh, I can do this. Like, this is a real thing. I can make this happen. And so our mission at the Speaker Lab is we want to give speakers clarity, confidence, and a clear path to make an impact. Clarity, confidence, and a clear path. And so confidence is a big part of that, is because, again, so many speakers like myself were going like, who am I to be up there? Like, nobody should listen to what I have to say. Like, I'm just a normal dude. Like, there's no reason that people should hire me to speak. But after doing that first gig, again, it was like that confidence booster of like, oh wait, this is a thing. Like, I can actually do this. I could make a living from this. Yeah, it's a lot of work and it's really hard, but I can do this. And so when I talk with speakers, when our team talks with speakers and they say, hey, I followed the system and I just booked my first gig for $500, for $1,000, for $5,000, for $2,500. For me, I'm just like, I just think back to sitting in the parking lot with that check of like, dang, they're having that moment of like, they can do this. And we told them they could do it. We believed in them, but now they believe in themselves that they can actually do that. And so, man, speaking is just such a rewarding profession.
I know one thing you said to me that really stood out. I take this to heart, is that speaking has been here 100 years. It's going to be here another 100 years. I think now post pandemic, the world I can feel it from audiences I speak in front of. The world craves good speakers. They crave those in-person interaction and those events. And man, it just really excites me to know what the future looks like. I get a little behind the scenes peek sometimes on your plans and things like that, of what you got for all your students, for your audience, and for what the Speaker Lab is going to do far into the future, man. So we'll wrap it up right there, man. Dude, I just want to thank you again for letting me host the 500th episode of this show. It is a freaking honor, man. I love you, dude. I'm so proud of you, and I love watching you do your thing. And I know that everybody else loves looking forward to those Speaker Lab podcasts that'll be coming to them in the future, man. So thank you so much, dude. Great job.
Hey, thank you, buddy. I really appreciate you being here. For everyone listening, thanks for being with us for 500 episodes. Hopefully, Lord willing, we can do another 500 into the future. And yeah, wherever you're at in your speaking journey, we want to support you. We want to give you that clarity, confidence, a clear path you need to make an impact. So thanks for being here. You guys are awesome. Hey friend, are you ready to get serious about taking your speaking business to the next level? Maybe you are someone who is looking for ways to book more paid gigs, or maybe you're trying to figure out all the different things that go into building a successful speaking business. Or perhaps you are an experienced speaker who wants to scale your speaking business to multiple six figures. If that's you, I'd encourage you to visit thespeakerlab.com/call. Again, thespeakerlab.com/call, and book a free, no obligation call with our team. And if you're not quite ready to take that leap, I don't want you to hesitate in checking out all the free resources that we have available to you on our website, including this podcast. So head over to thespeakerlab.com. Again, thespeakerlab.com. Find hundreds of blog posts, how-to guides, podcast episodes, email scripts, proposal templates, and so much more. Finally, I got a big favor. I would love for you to leave us a rating or review for this podcast. We read every single one, and it also helps other speakers find valuable free resources that they can use to build their own speaking careers. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.